All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. I'm going to call to order the regular school board meeting for the Anchorage School District. In the boardroom today, I have Board Member Hildy, myself, Board Member Lisa Vacalis, Board Member Dave Donnelly, and Board Member Margot Bellamy. Also in the room, I have our Superintendent, Dr. Dina Bishop. On Zoom, I see Board Member Holloman and Board Member Mitchell. We're missing one person, and when I see her join, I will go ahead and announce that as well. And we do have our student rep with us today, Miss Emily Hickox. Thank you for joining us today. All right, we have a quorum. We can continue on. Miss Margot, for the first time back in the boardroom, would you please do our flag salute? Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge with gratitude the Dena'ina people, both past and present, who have lived on these lands since long before Anchorage was here. May we all be good stewards of these lands. Chanan. And Miss Emily, would you please do our opening statement?
My name is Emily Hickox, and I am the student representative to the board. I was elected to serve through the Student Advisory Board. Although my votes are advisory only, I offer a student voice to the body. We would like to welcome you to our meeting and thank you for attending and supporting the work of the Anchorage School District and this board. The board thanks students, parents, teachers, staff, school business partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district with your time, your talent, and your tax dollars.
Thank you, Emily. Next, and I'd like to acknowledge that Board Member Marcette has also joined us. Next up is the approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move to approve.
I second.
Thank you. I have a first and a second. Are there any modifications or adjustments to the agenda?
Yes.
Member Marcette?
In one of our, I wrote it down, I gotta find it. Memorandum, is it, and maybe it's not on here. It's the one that has to do with the donations and funding, and I'm trying to find it. I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't.
Is it under the consent agenda, 076 and 078? Or something?
Is it 079?
It's a non-action item.
Okay.
Oh, that's a non-action item. So you want to pull that to discuss it non-action?
Yeah, but I can do that later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Any other requests or modifications? Seeing no objections, the agenda is approved as is. Next up is our military report. Did Colonel Delamater join us today? All right. I'm not seeing him, but if he does show up in a little bit, I will circle back around for him if the board is okay with that. Next up would be our Student Advisory Board report and Miss Emily.
All right, we had our last Student Advisory Board meeting on the 18th of February. We were super lucky. Miss Vacalis was able to join us. And then it was super great. We set aside a period of time to just talk amongst the students to sort of see what people are doing, how they've been, what people are thinking about the school start. We elected a new public relations officer, Cicely Wheelis from Diamond, and then did sort of an overview of our resolution process. And so we're hoping that through that new resolution process, we can have a clearer way for students to bring resolutions to the board. Our next meeting is going to be the 18th of March. I believe Miss Vacalis is coming back, possibly with Miss Bellamy as well. So we're super excited for that. And then we're also going to have more elections to elect our president-elect and hopefully another secretary. So we're really looking forward to that. And I think that's it for us.
Thank you so much, Emily. It was very nice to join your meeting and really get to hear the student voices from all around the district come together. It was just amazing, and just so how much I've missed it. So looking forward to watching you guys continue on your process. Next up, board conference and committee reports, as well as community outreach. They are on our agenda. They are attached as written reports. And so folks in the listening gallery, you're logging into board docs, can see all of the committee reports that are attached to the agenda out there. Next up is goal monitoring. And Dr. Bishop, I would like to turn this over to you at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. For goal monitoring, today we don't have data to share with you. We do have, however, a mind's eye of the 30,000-foot view of the plan for next year. And as stated through our training, monitoring what students know and are able to do by way of your goals, which state what students, the expectation for what they know and should be able to do. And the board had selected these 3 primary goals, and I just placed these in here, and then we also have guardrails. And each of these goals and guardrails will have interim goals and guardrails. Basically a plan, the strategic plan on how are we going to get to that reading proficiency goal of 80%, the math at 55%, as well as the life and college career ready. Part of the goal setting and then the guardrails is for the board to be updated at each of its meetings in the subsequent year and years to come about the progress towards these goals. So it isn't we say we want this and then we'll find out at the end of the year. There will be data of student learning to demonstrate what students are learning and able to do. Data will be presented to you. And so I just want to review some of the items that we're going to be looking at, that assessments that are here. NAEP is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and this is a national assessment. And for those who don't know it, the whole entire district does not take this test. In fact, it's randomly selected to represent the demographics of Alaska. We had over 60 schools selected in the last NAEP assessment, and they pick particular grade levels, and they come in 4, 8, and 12, sometimes not all the time 12, and they look at primarily reading and math. Sometimes they come in and do an assessment in science to take a look at what kids need, but the longitudinal trend is really in reading and math. And it looks at, again, students across our entire nation, and it will give a report by Alaska. But we will share that. I'll share in the calendar when that will be. But just wanted to share that. Now, PEAKS, we'll be utilizing the PEAKS assessment. The PEAKS was written into the board's goals several times, and that's the performance evaluation for Alaska schools, which is the selected test for Alaska. And last year, I know years ago, Member Holloman really talked about the measures of academic progress, which is also in another district assessment, that they were looking at to be able to not only provide a standardized assessment, but also an assessment about growth. And they're working on that. Last year, they did an RFP, actually, and I was on the team to look at the proposals, but it did not go through at the end of the year with the pandemic. They're sticking with PEAKS another year. But PEAKS could change. Other tests that might be familiar are this standards-based assessment, the SBA. We had AMP, Alaska's measure for progress. So Alaska has jumped around quite a bit, which makes it difficult for us to really look at longitudinal data. I would concur with Member Holloman that if the state ever did go to MAP, we would really have more data to look over time, and it'd be much easier. So, but the PEAKS assessment is grades 3 through 9, and we will be taking the assessment this year as best we can. With students back in school, they're asking for it to be administered. Again, nationally as well as statewide, they just want a picture of children's learning and or unfinished learning that has occurred this year during the pandemic. So I do want to share that there was action to possibly postpone it for another year. As you know, last year at the beginning of the pandemic, many states similar to ours went online. We really didn't have a lot of information. We were still learning about COVID-19, but we will be taking peaks this year. Again, that's an Alaska test that meets the federal requirements for testing to receive federal funds. The Alaska Developmental Profile, I just put that in there. It may be used at some point, but a few of the board members had asked about that. And it's really for incoming kindergarten or first graders if you didn't take it in the kindergarten. And it really gives Alaska just an overview of how kids are prepared coming in. District assessments really are these two, and I'm going to share a little bit because you'll see these presented to you more often because there are the assessments that we use that are really, they're interim assessments to where we can give 3 times a year. We get the results very quickly. They assist us in pivoting our instruction to know what next do kids need to know and be able to do. And so while the peaks happens once a year, FastBridge, we have a total assessment in our grade levels at 3 times a year, the fall, the winter, and the spring. But for progress monitoring as well, weekly, you could give and get some information off the FastBridge. FastBridge is what replaced, you might have heard AimsWeb or DIBBLES. Those are some tests that went through some renewing, if you will, in another company, FastBridge. It's a curriculum-based measure. Simply stated, you're actually using the curriculum, what you want kids to know and be able to do, to assess what they know and able to do. So these kids would read a passage, they would say their sounds, perhaps letter sound fluency, and it gives a fluency measure as well as some other simple measures. It does not tell you comprehension. We do know that fluency is linked to comprehension, but this FastBridge is not designed for comprehension. MAP growth, and that's the new name for MAP, the measures of academic performance. It's called MAP growth now, and it's demonstrating what it can do in its name. It will assess students' knowledge. And the beauty about MAP growth for this board, and we'll revisit this all the time, is that it really shares a student's learning level. And when a child takes this assessment, generally they all feel equally successful because the test actually stops the administration when 49 to 52% of the questions are right or wrong, because it's demonstrating what the kids know, what they don't know, and kind of finds that it's a Goldilocks test. It tells you exactly where students should begin their learning, kind of on the edge of their seats, and what next they need to learn. That's given in the fall, winter, and spring for both reading comprehension as well as math knowledge and English language arts and math. So this test, if it does change in the future, it would embedded in the criterion reference test, it would actually have the standards embedded for each grade level. But right now, I could be in 2nd grade, and if I was a quick learner in advanced, I might be getting 5th grade questions. And it just does that. On a standardized test, if I'm in 2nd grade or 3rd grade, I'm getting only those grade level questions. So that's the beauty about MAP growth, because it can move into the future there. So additionally, for the college and career ready, we will be presenting SAT and ACT, which will be built into those interim, because remember, those are assessments that kids choose to take, but that's also one of those is an indicator whether kids are going to be college ready. Work Keys is a workforce development assessment, and the state administers it. And it will give you a bronze, silver, or gold certificate that lets you know if you are work ready. And it tests you on workplace problems, critical thinking, things like that. And because our college and career ready, the board's goals really speak about what kids know and are able to do. It also includes just a count of successfully passing a class that we want, such as financial literacy. But also, we're going to be taking a look at third-party certifications, because you're also going to be career ready if our students pass these. Over 1,000 ASD students leave our school system a year having one of these certificates, and they're given by a third party. So we don't control the test. We don't have anything to do with the test other than just teaching the kids the skills. But these are work-ready certificates that they can go out there and get a job. They're great. The multi-position welding can really give them a livable wage job right away. We have vet tech. We have EMT, CNA, electronics and telecommunication certs that really, I'm not only leaving school with a degree, high school diploma, if you will, but also I have a certificate that demonstrates that I can do something. And lots of kids have these. So these will be built into our reporting as well. So this is just a snapshot. It is not a deep dive. Each of these assessments that I'm sharing in these months will be determined. What grade level will we give, and how are we going to talk about it? Dr. Stock and his team have outlined when tests and assessments are given, the reporting period, because sometimes they come back immediately, such as in MAP. Sometimes they will take 6 months to get the report back. And so these proposed outcome monitoring months with information are best thinking right now. When we present this to you next year and begin, after the work with our strategic planning task force, September might drill down peaks to another level that might just look at third grade peaks. So we will, of course, the board will always have access to all the data, but our monitoring might really answer specific questions along our journey to meet a goal. But these are designed around when assessments are given, when they're reporting, and then when we have time to communicate them. So just for a mind's eye, NAEP will just share in July along with any other board information that the board would like. August, that's when we're just starting up. We have the prior year's assessments that we'll share with you. This year it would basically be a baseline, but that's when we begin our other assessments that are in school. So September, we'll share the peak from the prior year. October and November, we'll share the beginning of the year assessments for math and reading for our students to meet those goals. December, we'll share a graduation rate monitoring. And in the spring, January and February will be devoted to our high school students' non-assessment indicators, such as completion of courses, things like that. We had a checklist that we presented to you on college and career. So we'll really work around there. January and February is a time during the winter assessment window that they're taking FastBridge and MAP. And so they'll take it in January, the first week of February. We'll be able to review it, present it to you in March. And then they actually take it again in late April and May. Then we'll present to you in May and June, depending on those scores. But again, reading proficiency, math, Life College Ready, those are our primary goals up top. Embedded in those, if you think about the guardrails and how we're going to update you on those as well, those will be embedded in some of these topics. Those talk about different student groups, different diversity. The data will also be presented to you for those, but as far as the goals, the outcome monitoring will be by these student assessments and student work. Our guardrails are really built around adults as well. And with that, if there's any questions, again, this is our first presentation we had. It was a little tricky this year because we're not on a normal assessment window. So we're looking at them in the future, and the different companies actually set assessment windows, because you can take a FastBridge and a MAP and you can correlate it not only to our own district and our own kids, but in our state as well as nationally. So all of these are set for what we believe those testing windows will be for those assessments. If you want to do a fall assessment, you can't test outside of that window if you want to compare it to other schools' same score and other, around the country. So we really are, we're tied to those assessments themselves.
All right, so opening it up to board member questions, and member Hildy has her hand raised.
Thank you. This is, I'm very excited about the progress monitoring calendar. So thank you so much for anchoring our work to our board goals. That's very exciting. Just talking about the who in all of this, where do our ELL students, where do our special education students fit into some of these? Are they going to be in all of these assessment components, or are we going to be seeing them throughout the year? Or are there any students that aren't going to be part of this?
Through the board chair to member Hildy, that's a great question. Actually, because our goals are about all students, we will be reporting on all students. There might be a time that we specifically, FastBridge has multiple assessments. So what we might pick one of those and drill it down to lots of different students. But our students on alternate assessments will be provided, students on our state assessments. But in our district with the goals and preparing all students for success, we will include those different student groups as well as the demographics.
Thank you. Next up is board member Bellamy.
That was really one of my questions, but I have one more. Thank you, Dr. Bishop. And I guess, Madam President, we are going to infuse or embed this into our board calendar for monitoring, correct? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have my hand raised for a question as well. I know we've adopted our goals and our guardrails, but we haven't done our interim goals and our guardrails. And I know part of that is waiting on a data component, the here's where we are to here where we want to be. When do we anticipate some of those being able to be adopted by the board?
That's a great question as well. And this year, again, to be able to start those SMART goals with where kids are, we're struggling because the original assessments, now that we're back in school, we are finishing up and getting done our FastBridge and MAP by the end of this year. So we'll have those for you. So it's not only based on the data, but we also, Dr. Stock is working with a group of folks that are really focused around the board's goals and guardrails and the strategic plan. We provided some interim ideas for the board just to give you a picture of what it would look like at our level. And they're going to take those, but those groups are actually made up of additional stakeholders, and there might be some suggestions from them about what else to monitor to be sure that you're going to get to that goal. So we'll provide those for you. Frankly, right now we're designing a whiz-bang summer school, unfinished learning school. And as soon as that is deployed, then our next work is this really coming down to those interim pieces that you need. So it's based off of this year's data. And we'll have those at the end of this year to see where our kids' learning was during the pandemic. But also there might be additional interim goals that the board hasn't really reviewed as a sample that's coming from the strategic plans task force.
Thank you. Next up, board member Marcette.
So I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but because we're talking about what we'll be looking at the start of next year with our monitoring and so on. I know that there's going to be other changes within our departments affecting our students. When are those going to be released to the public as we bring those about?
Through the president to member Marcette, we're just, I believe, member Marcette, you're talking about some of the redesign that we're doing in special education. If the
Yes.
board recalls, really to ground our work, we redesigned ELL to best practices.
Right.
And right now, our senior director of special education is working with the teams there to wrap around best practices into our work. So as those get completed, we can share those as well and even do written reports for the board.
Great. Just transparency.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next up in the queue, Board Member Mitchell.
Thank you for that update. I am super excited about that monitoring calendar. It'll really ground the work, as you said, in our goals and guardrails. So one of the things I'm curious to see is, with the growth of ASD virtual and the thousands of students we have there, taking a look at how they're being assessed this year and how they have performed versus the students who did the Zoom and are back in school now. So is that something we can expect to see next fall?
Through the chair to Member Mitchell, actually we sent that out in the last Board Connect. That was a question and we sent that to you. Their achievement actually mirrors the larger district. ASD Virtual does, as well as their population and demographics. Our other homeschool programs, their demographics don't necessarily mirror ASD's general, but we shared those data for you. But we can certainly, with ASD Virtual as well as with any other school, break down schools. That's what, just so the board knows, we're going to share student populations with you. But when we work with our principals and our teams, we are digging deep and looking at where are things working in schools, where are they not, kids were successful here and not. So we really dig deep into so that we can answer the question, what can we do to set up the parameters for student success? Because I wrote it down. I love this quote. The adults in our school system create the conditions with which children will succeed. So we need to continue to assess children's learning so that we understand where are they succeeding. And we have some awesome highlights in our district in regard to different schools, different programs, different classes. Drill it down to the teacher. We go ask teachers, what is happening in your class that's very different than this? So we're going to need all those data and those discussions, the data discussions and the student learning discussions to make that happen.
So I know that in the Board Connect, we took a look at the grades, the notes that the students are getting, but I was more interested in the, what we get assessed as on a federal level, more the peaks testing and the summative stuff. I know we don't get peaks on the individual students, but we do. Anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that stuff.
Next up in the queue, Board Member Hildy.
Thank you. Just on the interim goals, one thing we had talked about when we did our superintendent evaluation, timeline is that in the fall, once you have all the data from the previous year, then we would say, what is the goal for this year? What is the interim goal? The board would discuss it and say, yeah, that sounds like it's on track. So that's when my expectation for those are. But I don't know, in the past with Destination 2020, we did see strategic goals kind of laid out over 3 years, or interim goals laid out over 3 years. Is that something you anticipate doing a multi-year and then, looking at it every fall with the board to see if we're still okay with that, but still planning multiple years out?
Through the president to Member Hildy, the answer is yes, because I believe and my experience is that some changes we're going to look for year to year, but some would be a 2 to 3 year, depending on the amount of time to change a system, if you will. So for reading and math, I see year to year, we're going to make this much, have a SMART goal. And, but for some of the career college ready, if it takes redesigning, it might take over 2 years to see a change, and we might spell that out. So that would all come from the stakeholder group understanding what are the necessary changes to be able to come about to be able to meet that interim piece. So it might be 2 years worth of work, and we would report that. In the past with Destination 2020, excellent goals, 6 absolutely wonderful goals that we've had. When I arrived at ASD, there were not SMART goals written for each of those. So it was, we wanted this, but there was no capture to say this is the progress towards it. So that was an attempt to really write small, smart goals with those data. And they were really written in different departments and the idea for strategic planning is, when we know better, we do better now. And so this group is going to be tied together and understand the different levers and what the capacity is to change. So there might also be a time when the interim goal for one item might be greater than the interim goal of another, just because of the capacity for people to do the work, and especially our folks in schools. So long answer, I always give more than I need to. Yes is the answer, that some might be shorter than others and some might be 2 to 3 years or longer period of time.
All right, last chance for any board members to ask any questions regarding our goal monitoring section of the agenda tonight. All right, not seeing any. We're going to go ahead and move on in our agenda. Wanted to just note for board members, and we'll get this posted online as well, that Colonel Delameder did join us just briefly, and he did submit his report in writing. So we'll get that out for folks to read. We always welcome that. Next up is going to be public testimony. I will read a semi-brief statement. The board welcomes public testimony. We value public comment as it ensures that we remain aware of public thoughts, ideas, and concerns, and informs our decision-making process. There is a 1-hour time slot at the beginning of the meeting. Testimony in excess of 1 hour will be heard at the end of the meeting or may be submitted in writing. Each person will have 3 minutes to testify. When 30 seconds remain, a chime will ring to inform you so that you can finish your sentence. Additionally, I will also try and get your attention if it goes over 3 minutes, but if I have to, I'll ask IT to hit mute. Additionally, it is not our practice that board members answer questions or engage in discussion with board members. This is your time to speak and our time to listen. The board will consider all information shared by the public, and when deemed necessary, issues raised in testimony will be referred to the administration for follow-up. And I believe we have 10 people, plus maybe I'll see who signed up in person. But right now, our first person in person is Takita Parker. Thank you for joining us. You should see a timer right below on the screen. Hopefully it's on, and you've got 3 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me? Good evening. My name is Takita Parker, and I'm the Program Manager for Partners Reentry Center with the Department of Corrections. I volunteer as a youth safety advocate for Covenant House, Alaska. I am also the membership chair for the Alaska Black Caucus and a member of the Alaska Black Caucus Education Committee. The Anchorage School District has received numerous reports of racism and discrimination toward people of color. What is the purpose, plan, and goal for the anti-racism and instructional equity policy? Will it ensure that Black and Brown youth have equality in regards to education? Will teachers have to abide by the policies and procedures on anti-racism within the school district, Anchorage School District? Will it foster a safe environment for Black and Brown youth to report racism in their school? Will it show teachers how to engage in conversations in their school community that will lead to anti-racist actions? How will the Anchorage School District stay accountable and committed to this anti-racism policy? We've lost more than 71,437 Black lives to COVID-19 to date. Black and Brown people make up 15% of COVID-19 deaths where race is known. How can we trust that the COVID-19 safety measures implemented within the Anchorage School District will protect Black and Brown youth from contracting COVID-19? I asked this question because it was a picture posted on social media that showed one of your colleagues reading to a group of kids and they were not practicing social distancing. These are my questions regarding the anti-racism policy and the COVID-19 safety measures within the Anchorage School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I believe speaker number 2 on the phone is Mr. Daniel Kemp. Are you with us tonight?
Yes, can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you for calling in. You have 3 minutes and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you to the board for having me tonight. My name is Danielle Kemp. I am the president of the newly formed Alaska Coalition of BIPOC Educators. I am a co-chair of the Alaska Education Association Human and Civil Rights Committee, and I'm a retired Army combat officer and teacher here at the ASD, as well as a parent of 2 kids who are members of the Anchorage School District. Tonight, I want to testify about something that kind of has me a little worried, and that is the plan that I saw for middle school and high school return. All right. Now, before I get to the high school teachers and students, I would like to start with elementary, because I'm an elementary school teacher. All right. So right now, after I enter the building in the morning, all right, I use the restroom only twice a day. Once for lunch, but I get 30 minutes, and then at the end of the day. And, you know, it's not that easy, all right, because you kind of suffer from chronic dehydration, which is not cool at all. And I would, God help our poor high school teachers who will have apparently 0 breaks per day. 0. If anybody did not hear me first time, 0 breaks per day. Apparently the only way they can get a bathroom break is to radio in someone to stand in for them each time. I mean, that's just pretty embarrassing, right? I mean, also, I think it kind of borders on abuse. Now, how are we going to subject our teachers to this, right? Our students will also be stuck in one room all day. No lunch break at all. You know, from 5.5 to 7 hours a day, confined to a single location with the same 17, 30 people. Now, kind of sounds like prison, right? So, you know, high schoolers, they breathe more and farther. And with these new COVID variants that are popping up all the time, it just makes it even more difficult, right? It's difficult of a situation. So, you know, I just don't see how we can do this to our teachers or to our students to put them through this. And I would respectfully request that this board address this before moving forward with this plan of action. So thank you very much for your time and consideration on this matter, and I look forward to the board's response tonight on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on the phone, speaker number 3, Rosalind Grady-Weish. Rosalind, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am, and it's Rosalind White. Thank you for having me speak. You ready?
Yes, ma'am. Go for it.
Okay. So I'm Rosalind White. I am the vice president and co-founder of the newly forming nonprofit, the Alaska Coalition of BIPOC Educators. I am an ASD employee, a para-educator for special education resource at Mountain View Elementary School. I am also a proud member of the board of directors for the Totem Association now, and a mother of 5. I have 3 preschoolers, King and Queen, who is 4 years old, Winter, who is 5 years old. They are enrolled in the ASD neighborhood preschool program. AJ, who is 11, Kennedy, who is 13, both being homeschooled through Paideia, where I have learned that one of them are on their own process, her own pacing guide, as she calls it, and another one who actually has an IEP and who I have had to supplement a whole lot of work for some reason because he's nowhere where I expected him to be. No shade, COVID, right? But as his mother and an ASD employee who is also working on her degree, a dual degree in elementary education and special education K through 12, I will make sure through the support of my village, I will do what it takes to make sure my children are receiving a fair, equal, and equitable education. Oh, did I mention I am a single parent too? As you can see, someone like me benefits from an anti-racism policy and the instructional policy as well that needs to be passed. What are we waiting for? Oh, okay. I would also like to shout out Women's History Month to all the women educators in our district, all over Alaska and all over the world. I didn't speak last month, but I am Black, 365 days, 24/7. So Black History isn't just a month for me, it's forever a history implanted in my culture that I or we as Americans should never forget. You can't just brush that type of stuff up under a rug. Because of that history, we are who we are as a culture. And once again, that can never be forgotten. Last but not least, I would like to give shouts out to my preschool squad that takes care of my preschoolers online, because I am currently still uncomfortable with sending my preschoolers to school. Those would be Miss Babylon, Miss Erin, Mr. Kyle, Miss Hilda, and Miss Kayla, their speech pathologists. They're an awesome preschool team over at Mountain View who go above and beyond to meet my children where they need to be met because they're not in the building. I appreciate you guys for listening to me. I just felt like you guys should know who some of your employees are, me particularly, because I am coming through here. You guys have a beautiful and blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on the phone, speaker number 4, Niall Williams. Niall, are you on the line tonight?
Hi, yes, Niall Sherwood Williams, if it may please the school board. I'm a candidate for seat number E as in Edward. I would like to speak to the school board through the school board president this evening. I would like to draw attention to the last public meeting. A gentleman named David Boyle, member of the public, tried to testify. He was thwarted over the phone and submitted his documentation in writing. So I would like to follow up on his testimony today. I would like to draw the board's attention to Anchorage Municipal Code 29.10.060, subsection A11. And what that is the attendance policy of school board members. School board members are required to attend physically in person 75% of the time over a 24-month period. That is also fortified under Anchorage School Board Policy 9923 under page 2, attendance number 4. It says school board members are required to attend physically in person 75% of the time over a 24-month rolling period. So when you go online to public.tableau.org, which is a secondary reporting source, it lists the attendance of all the school board members. And you see physically present. There are 4 members that are in violation of this. It's a breach of the public trust. Those members' names through the president are Andy Holloman, Dave Donnelly. Both those members have 59% attendance. Dina Mitchell, 65% attendance. Margot Bellamy, 69% attendance. Through the president, Ms. Michaelis. Yes, are you cutting me off?
Our board policy states that you cannot call people out directly by name. And so I'm trying to make sure that you are following our board policy, please. He can finish up for the last minute if he keeps.
Hello? Hello?
You have 1 more minute. Please continue according to policy.
Yes. So as members of the public heard, Anchorage Municipal Code 29.10.060, subsection A11. Anchorage School Board Policy 9923. That fortifies the Anchorage Municipal Code. The required in-person physical attendance. This dates back to member Pat Higgins, who was shamefully unpresent and living in the Marshall Islands while a member of the school board and collecting salary from the taxpayers of Anchorage. So, school board president, Ms. Michaelis, you have 2 choices this evening. Declare those 4 seats vacant or demand the resignation of those 4 members immediately, as you allowed for Betty Davis, a former member of the school board who served for a very long time and was sick. And Star Marset and Ms. Michaelis, you should remember this. You allowed for her to resign and not be shamed. So, members of...
Please. Thank you. I learned that at forums. Next up, speaker number 5, Celeste Hodge Groden. Celeste, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Anchorage School Board and Superintendent Bishop. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. I am Celeste Hodge Groden, President and CEO of the Alaska Black Caucus. We are a nonprofit organization that advocates for the rights of Black people and the BIPOC community in the areas of health, justice, economics, and yes, education. First, happy Women's History Month. Yes, it's important to recognize the contributions of women who have accomplished great work in this country, state, city, and yes, including within the Anchorage School District. We had and currently have teachers, teachers' assistants, principals like Dr. Elfeldra Davis, first Black woman teacher and principal at Fairview Elementary, and Betty Davis, former founding member of the Alaska Black Caucus, the first Black woman elected to the House of Representatives, first Black senator, a trailblazer on many fronts, who accomplished so much. And the Alaska Black Caucus is so proud to have played a role in having East High School renamed after her. Now parents, children, and others can learn and hear about Davis and her work as they enter the school or drive by. We look forward to the ribbon cutting and to hosting the 3rd annual Betty Davis African American Summit. The purpose for this testimony, we are applauding the efforts of the Governance Committee in its work of the anti-racism and instructional equity policy. There is a common misconception that equity and equality mean the same thing, and that they can be used interchangeably, especially when talking about education. But the truth is, they do not and cannot. Yes, the two words are similar, but the difference between them is crucial. We must have equity. In the words of our newest Alaska Black Caucus Education Committee advisor, former Superintendent Lee Klume, equity is not a place to reach in your own reality and rest there. Equity is not a place. It's a mindset, which must be a bridge between and amongst all levels of education and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, speaker number 6, Dawn Bockelman. Dawn, are you on the line with us tonight?
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can. You have 3 minutes and the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dawn Bockelman. I'm both a teacher and parent within ASD. I'm here tonight to address a series of questions that were asked during the last board meeting by another ASD employee. First question, quote, why were they, school board members, trying to sabotage the new anti-racism policy and stall the federally mandated external equity audit, unquote. I don't believe that questioning the motive of a biased company to perform such an audit is either stalling or sabotaging. In fact, I think it was a brave and honest thing to do. I think it's deceptive to perform such an audit without the entirety of the voting and tax-paying population that funds the school district, knowing who this company is and knowing exactly what critical race theory is. Citizens should not be signing a blank check to any company without knowing the details. Just because you claim sabotage doesn't make it true. Second question, quote, what have they done to shrink the BIPOC teacher gap with less than 1% of all teachers are Indigenous in a city with about 23% Native Alaska population? That's a 22% gap. Representation matters, unquote. It's not a 22% gap. This is an irresponsible misrepresentation of statistics on your part. You'll have to come up with something far more detailed for this to be taken into consideration. What part of that 23% is neither elderly or youth and inside of a potential teacher age range? What percent already makes up the population of other skilled positions they've trained for and worked hard for, like every other race of people in Anchorage? Your gap comment takes none of these details into consideration and are only a few of the problems with it. Following this, you make a lengthy claim and state that, quote, we need the school board members who will look out for all of the ASD and not make excuses just to look after the white or wealthy, unquote. In this claim, you've written off all conservative board members as those with lack of empathy and desire for understanding, which is simply an opinion and in no way measurable. I see no valid measure either of your claim that they only look out for the white and wealthy, when one of the school board's many driving factors for getting kids back into school was so that parents could go back to work to support their families. Going back to the white and wealthy comment, you started the sentence with, "We need school board members that will look out for all of the ASD," while simultaneously implying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that no conservative member should be on the board, period. You may find this hard to believe, but the school board does not serve you directly, sir, nor me as a teacher directly. Instead, they must do the best they can to serve the community, our children, families, and yes, even just general taxpayers who want to see our city thrive. Your voice is not the only voice. Your ideas are not the only ideas. Like teachers, the school board cannot be everything to everyone all the time, nor should we ask them to. Our goal is education, and I would argue equal opportunity in education, not some undefined idea of equity with no endpoint as a solution. Lastly, I would direct the public's attention to ASD's recommended reading list for self-understanding on racism, which includes authors such as D'Angelo and Kendi, which is kind of ironic because both believe white people are inherently racist. As Jordan Peterson said, the idea that you can target an ethnic group as a collective crime, regardless of.
Thank you. I hope folks understand this is to keep it, fair for everybody, that they all get the same 3 minutes. It's not to cut anybody off unintentionally. Just trying to work with technology right now. For those that don't get to finish, they can always submit their comments in writing. Number 7, Dr. Paula Williams. Dr. Williams, are you on the line with us tonight?
Good evening. I am Dr. Paula Williams, a proud member of Alaska Black Caucus and one of the co-chairs for the Education Committee. I testify to the difference of equity versus equality and parent trust in this pandemic. Equity and equality are not the same. Equality means everyone is treated the same or given the same resources. It assumes that everyone starts at the same place. Equity means making sure everyone can arrive at that same point, no matter where they start. And this pandemic has not been good for trust in education. The CDC stated that families of color are more likely to have negative interactions with their children returned to the public school system and feel that without constant vigilance, their children will be neglected, underestimated, and treated harshly. For decades, many of us have been uncomfortable talking about racial inequity issues. However, we can no longer afford not to address the issue of racial inequity in our educational system towards people of color. What data does the Anchorage School District have to support the safety measures that have been put in place to protect students, teachers, parents returning to in-person learning, especially those of color? And what is Anchorage School District doing to acknowledge that there are underlying systems within its learning curriculum that deny people of color equal starting points? And where can the public access this data? Thank you for this time.
Thank you. Next up in person is speaker number 8, Edgar Latchford. Thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes tonight.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Madam President. My name is Edgar Latchford. I live at 5043 Silver Circle, which is not too far from here, so easy distance. I would just like to say thank you for a couple of things I think are very, very critically important in this national turmoil that we seem to be at. And first of all is the recognition of Black History Month and the honoring of a person I called the voice or the conscience of the Senate, and that was the late Senator Betty Davis. I thought it was a great move to address the issue of how do you honor someone who is very substantial in the community, and that was a brilliant move. And so when I go around, I look for evidence of that reflects the growing diversity of Anchorage, and I was pleased when I come into the headquarters here is to see the picture or the painting of the Alaska Native teacher with Alaska Native students hanging above the administrative offices. I think it's you need to have evidence around Anchorage. You need to have evidence around the state. And I think the country is becoming incredibly diverse. It's not only in the United States, it's all over Europe, it's all over the Pacific Rim countries. We have to accept diversity and respect fairness and justice and equality. A couple of things I want to say, and I took a picture of the painting above the administrative office, and I posted it on Facebook, and I got a lot of likes. And then I began to feel guilty because maybe the people who saw the picture thought I painted it or I was responsible for it. I am not responsible for it. So I carry to you a great big thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up on the phone is speaker number 9, Reagan Brooks. Reagan, are you on the line with us?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We sure can. You have 3 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it short, but I want to thank you all for your service on the board, and thank you to the educators who are here or on the phone today and who are currently working so hard to support students. My name is Reagan Brooks. I'm a mother and a parent of 2 children in the Anchorage School District. I'm testifying today to echo the calls for equity versus equality and to express support for the adoption of an anti-racism policy. I wish there was no racism or inequity in our schools, but as many people have shared in previous school board meetings and elsewhere, and as the district has illustrated with its own data, it's simply not true. Please do not ignore problems that create trauma and undermine access to learning. There is racial inequality in our system. I know that none of you wish to support that. Whether or not I agree with you politically on everything, I do know that none of you wish to support that. And I urge you to do all you can to make ASD a safe, healthy, just, equitable, and anti-racist space for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see speaker number 10 on the line tonight. Was there anybody in the audience that I missed that may not have gotten signed up, or did anybody want to? Come on up. Yes. And if you would just kindly say your name and spell it.
Dustin Sherman for the record.
Thank you.
I think I'm on the list maybe for later tonight. I don't know. You can take me off after this. But so I'm here actually speaking on the behalf of the Anchorage, the high school bowling program. About a week or 2 ago, we had a couple young bowlers that bowl in the Anchorage bowl for the Anchorage School District here in Anchorage, and they had actually broken a couple state records that had been around since at least 2013. Some of them even further back than that. Well, they got an invite to go down and bowl the national high school bowling championships down in Dayton, Ohio. Well, the coaches decided to call in and find out what they would have to do to be able to go down there. And they found out that there had been I guess some kind of a ban on travel right now for high school sports. Well, that's kind of a shame, and how they were addressed is kind of appalling, honestly. They were told that if they proceed and they were to go down there, that they would fire the head coaches, which is honestly a volunteer position anyway, which is completely ridiculous. Okay, these kids worked their butts off for 4 years to get to this point, and you guys are going to tell them that they can't do it. Okay, now I don't know if you've ever heard of Sean Rash or not. He's one of our local celebrities here. He's actually a PBA champion like 10 times over. He's in the Hall of Fame. Okay, to take that away from these kids is completely ridiculous. And then once they told the head coaches that they would be fired if they went ahead and proceeded, that they were going to ban the entire high school bowling program, period. This doesn't cost you guys anything. It doesn't cost the school board anything. It's outsourced. So to come up with something like that is completely ridiculous. And I'm going to make sure that every bowling family that's in this city understands what you guys are doing. You're dashing the hopes and dreams of these kids. You're taking away a chance for them to get other scholarships down the road. It's completely ridiculous. So, I don't know what needs to happen, but in my experience, I've been in the bowling business for 30 plus years, and this is literally the worst thing I've ever seen happen. I know that we're going through COVID, and I know that things are happening. The tournament is in June. The ban on travel ends in July. What's to say that things change between now and then. What I'm asking you to do is to reevaluate that. Okay, at least give them a chance to go down and compete. This is in Dayton, Ohio. They're not having the same problems that we're having. They're all the bowlers that are bowling high school bowling are wearing their masks. They're getting checked. They're getting tested whenever they feel like they're sick. In the entire year that we've had COVID, we've had 2 or 3 kids that have come down with it. And actually only one of them that tested positive, I believe. The other ones stayed away and we got through it. Everything worked really well. And I want to give you guys props for that. But at the same time, we don't have a pandemic when it comes to bowling, okay? So please reevaluate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and speaker number 10 has joined us. It is Annie Massey. Are you on the line with us tonight? It is *6 to unmute. Annie Massey. I think we're having technical difficulties. All right, if you want, Annie, you can try calling back in if that might work. And don't have anybody else here though. Oh.
Hello?
Yes, there you are. Thank you. You have 3 minutes. The floor is yours.
Well, I feel very ill prepared for this evening, but thank you for taking the time to listen. My name is Annie Massey. I have 3 children, 2 in Anchorage School District. And I wanted to phone in tonight to go over a few points that I had the pleasure of presenting to our local legislators recently. There are 4 points to what I spoke about. The first one was asking for our leadership, and this includes the Anchorage School District and this board and our superintendent, to please protect the rights of parents in education and to remind them that the Supreme Court has upheld 5 times the fundamental rights of parents and that they possess the fundamental rights to direct the upbringing of their children, and this includes their education. And so I ask that this board consider a proposal to have a policy that protects parents' rights in education and the domain of the home. And the second point that I made was that after hours and hours and hours of research, trying to understand 150 years of philosophical nonsense, I want to ask our board, again, I've asked you all in email, but I haven't received a response, and I really would like to understand that each of you understands and have been instructed on what critical race theory is and the damage and divisiveness that's involved in these theories and ideas. And I want to tell you that that's what it is. It's a theory. These are theories and ideas that want to be taught to our children. And so therefore, they're not safe at school with these theories and ideas that are being infiltrated into policies being proposed right now. And that would be the anti-racism policy and the instructional equity policy. Now that you've altered the instructional equity policy a little bit more, it's better, I would say, but I have a lot of questions on both, of which I still need to hear back from some members. I have many, many questions unanswered. The third point was please open schools in full, all grades, and that it's also a catch-22, because if we open schools, our kids are at risk.
Annie, thank you for calling in tonight. Your 3
thank
minutes
you.
are up.
Thank you.
All right. Just remind folks listening online and board members in the room, we do have a few written public testimony that is also attached to the board docs agenda for everybody to also read as well. Next up in the agenda is our superintendent update. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam President. Today, I have 3 items for which I'd like to update the board. These items are really sharing with the board as well as the public the plan for our secondary schools lunch. Also, our Director of Health Services is here to share about the travel advisory. And then I want to update you on the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School and its move of its building. So with that, I'd request Dr. Johnson to come forward and just share a little bit about the design of our secondary lunches and kind of the impetus for that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bishop, through the board president to the board. I'm happy to be here to talk about secondary lunches. I know that this has been a topic that has crossed your desks recently with the start of fourth quarter coming. And so I just wanted to first start out with a little bit of just a brief description of what our plan is, and then talk about how we got there and how it serves our student needs. So first, the first part of the lunch schedule that we are going to start employing during fourth quarter when students come back really has the goal of trying to keep kids in smaller groups so they're not intermixing with 1,500 or so of their best friends at school, right? Because we have really large schools at our secondary level. We want to reduce their exposure by reducing that intermixing of students, and we really have some space limitations when we have that large of a number of students. And part of that comes from having a closed campus lunch that we typically don't have at high school level. It's different for middle school. But in our cafeterias, they are not equipped to fit every single student in there at one lunch hour. So there's some logistical issues around social distancing if we were to have a traditional lunch period and or having multiple lunches throughout the day, which would really drive the whole entire schedule during the day and really interrupt class time. So there was a lot of thought put into it. And the current schedule, just for awareness, is that when students arrive at school, if they would like to get breakfast at the cafeteria, they go to the school cafe, they get their lunch. They can also pick up a snack. They can also bring their own if they would like to school. So all of the food is free when they arrive because we have a special exemption around free and reduced lunch this year. So any student who needs it can get lunch or breakfast when they come to school. So they would take that breakfast to their first hour. Their first hour teacher would allow them to eat in class. And then they would proceed with their first hour class. They would then get to their second hour class. They have a 15 to 30 minute time frame in their second hour class, depending on school, to eat either a snack or if they wanted to bring a lunch during that time, they would be allowed to eat it during their second hour as well, although it is labeled snack time on our school schedules. So then students, when they would proceed to their third hour, and then at the end of their third hour, most schools that are larger are doing a staggered release of students so that we have less students in the hallway at one time. And they would go to the cafeteria and pick up their lunch at the cafe and then proceed either to get picked up by parents or get on the bus to go home. If students are participating in a sport after school, they're going to be given time to eat before their sport or activity after school as well. So all of those things have been kind of accommodated for within the schedule. It's just not spelled out as a individual lunchtime on their course schedule. So I talked about closed campus lunches. That is a logistical kind of feat for us with so many bodies at our secondary schools, so that we really want to make sure that they're distanced and not all together. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out is that this has been our schedule all year, even via Zoom. So students are accustomed to it, and they've been doing it all year. So the good news is that we're feeding more kids through our lunch program and our breakfast program than we ever have. So I know some of the feedback has been negative, like how could you do this to our kids? And I really want to kind of dispel that myth that we're really feeding more kids than we ever have, and we really are accommodating them within class time. So I also just wanted to share the board, all of our meals meet student nutrition federal guidelines. They are free, like I said. And then I talked about sports earlier as well. So students that are not attending face-to-face instruction, if they are opting to stay at home and complete their year, they can still go to our distribution sites as well and get lunch. And then the last point that I just wanted to point out to the board is that we did really address a request by AEA and worked collaboratively with them to just support our staff safety by limiting the exposure by mixing kids. So it's probably more than you wanted to know about lunch, but I thought it was really important. So. So back to you, Dr. Bishop.
Thank you. It's making us hungry now. So the main point, and Dr. Johnson shared as well, kids are not going to go hungry. It's actually plenty of time. It's a half an hour, a lot of times more than they have now. It's just done in those small groups to work through that mitigation. I appreciate that, Dr. Johnson. The next item is our travel guidance, and I want to, we cut and pasted the red band that is on our website that anyone can look at the travel guidance that's published. This has also been a question that I have received often. So Jem Petronis, if you could assist.
Good evening, everyone. So in the absence of a travel requirement from the state and the Muni, ASD adopted our own travel guidance. And essentially, all travelers, regardless of age, will have to present a negative COVID test before returning back to school or work. That's for both employees and students. If a traveler chooses not to get a COVID test, then they must strict social distance for 10 days, and they can return to work or school on day 11. Now, the only exemption to this is if someone had tested positive within 90 days of their travel, and then they'll be exempt from the COVID test by providing a proof of that positive test to their school nurse or their supervisor, and also be asymptomatic. If someone travels outside of Alaska for less than 72 hours, as long as they're asymptomatic, there are no requirements.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, we did make the newspaper. We actually have some expectations on travel where other districts don't. But we have been hearing, from some members of the public to go beyond what the state has declared for safety, and our city, because our city does not have any of those requirements either. So lastly, we have the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School, and I've kept the board president and vice president up to date, but wanted to share with the whole board what's happening. Through the process of monitoring every school building prior to students returning, we did find that the airflow in the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School was not up to our standards. And we did go back to the landlord and ask for it to be corrected. And our landlord is not a very good landlord. They did not make any corrections, and we're not going to. We have had adults in the building, and the airflow for the amount of adults in the building is fine now, but we felt as though bringing students back into there and more students breathing the air, we wanted to be sure that we just provided a better place to learn. So moving off of the board authority last year, when we had another issue with the landlord, the provision to move the school into East High School if needed, or to another facility, we utilized that to be able to really provide a fourth quarter of learning for the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School. So by the graces of Betty Davis, East Anchorage High School administrators as well as staff, they have left a part of the building, the Benson part of the building, and allowed for teachers for A and CCS to move in. And as you see, they're actively moving in this week. The principal Spinella and Sweetser gave an initial tour of the facility to staff back in February. And we're looking forward to welcoming our kids after spring break as well, to be able to have a face-to-face opportunity in a safe environment. And it's been a great team effort. I cannot say enough to the Kirsten on the instruction side, who assisted Daryl Vincek, as well as our folks on our maintenance and operations side. Were absolute leaders to be able to get this done. And so we have Mr. Hargraves here if you have any questions as well, and he spearheaded the actual operational side of this. Tomorrow, I wanted to let the board know that our elders are giving a blessing, a Native American blessing for the school at Betty Davis East Anchorage High School tomorrow. So that's a nice celebration, and certainly wanted to invite the board as well as the people involved in supporting this move. It is a temporary solution to a long-time problem that the board has heard about their facility. And we are working with the APC to come up with resolutions for a long-term planning for a school, for the charter school. But I just don't let schools fail. Schools that are good for kids should be the schools we support. And our support was offered to Alaska Native Cultural Charter School to be able to have a face-to-face opportunity. And so we're looking forward to this. You're certainly welcome. And again, Dr. Johnson and Mr. Hargraves are here. Everybody's really here to answer any questions that you might have, but these three were of particular interest for the board. As you may have heard, you've also received questions about these three items. So that completes my report. And again, staff will assist me as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Are there any board members with any questions for Dr. Bishop or her team? I saw Member Marcet.
Yes, I am curious. I know we've looked at lunches, and I'm wondering, what will school look like when our students are back? Will they be changing classrooms? Are they going to be in one classroom? Will there be any Zoom, or will this be in-person learning?
Through the president to Member Marcet, Dr. Johnson, can you please share the daily schedule? And just so I know, our parents should be receiving from their own schools their schedules this week as we plan. But here it is for the public.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Bishop. Through the president to Member Marcet. So when students come back fourth quarter, they'll be going physically to their 3 course periods face-to-face. So they'll be changing classrooms in a staggered method that is individualized to each school and the physical setup in that school. So not all of the kids will be out in the hallway at one time. They'll be staggering their release and entry into classrooms to limit kind of just that social distancing factor and limit their physical interaction so that we can stop the spread of COVID within our schools if it's there. So they will be attending face-to-face. They won't necessarily be doing Zoom during that time. They'll be engaged in normal school activities in those 3 periods in 3 different classrooms.
Thank you. And I do want to apologize to the board for, I noticed an E missing from Betty's name on our slide. So we'll get that fixed to post it. I apologize for that.
Thank you. Next up in the queue, I had Member Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam President. Is there any way for the bowling students, the students that are doing the bowling, to just travel on their own, not on behalf of the school district, to attend the events they want to attend?
Through the president, I'm going to ask Dr. Johnson to come forward as well. I didn't have any detail on this. This was the first I had heard about it as well, but I'm going to turn it over to secondary ed for the process of what that looks like and to answer that question.
Sure. Yeah. Through the president to Member Donnelly. So families do have the option if they'd like to travel on their own. The difficulty is that their coach wouldn't be able to coach them as an official ASD student through, all of the ASD coverage that we provide in case something goes wrong. So parents would have to go. The coach may not be able to go with them as a school coach, and they'd have to do it completely independently with their parents.
That's what I was hoping for. I understand the liability issues with any ASD employee, even if they're a volunteer conducting travel at this point in time. But I hope those options were provided to the parents and the bowling folks, and they were just told, if you go, you're going to be punished.
Right. I wasn't a part of the conversation. Holly Zumbro in my office was the one that spoke to the gentleman that was here before, and I plan to have a follow-up conversation with him probably tomorrow, so we can kind of work on some options. So,
thank you.
Next up in the queue, Board Member Bellamy.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for clarifying the lunch. I think the title of that article was just so misleading, and it just caused a lot of questions. So I thank you for clearing that up. The other question has been answered. You can sit. And then I would like an update, Ms. Petronas, on Dr. Bishop, however we do that, on the title of how we are capturing the community data. I understand that it hasn't been updated. At least that's one of the letters we got.
I could actually answer that through the president to member Bellamy. A couple of weeks ago, we actually, when the CDC guidance came out, we charged our webmaster to redesign that page. It was in a review process with everything else going on. We just missed posting it and giving the final approval. So it should be any day now. It was just, he designed it right away. It was done within a day. It's just that, given, I think this week probably having about 3,000 people coming in, we just didn't get it. So we'll get that update because we should have had that. So thank you.
All right. Those were my questions.
Thank you. Next up in the queue, Board Member Hildy.
It's live actually right now, because when we saw that email, they had already had it done. So they said it's already live. I just got a text. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On the Alaska Native Charter School being in the Betty Davis East High School, what is there, like a new wall put up? Is it like at Paydale or in Central where it's like two separate schools? I'm just, picturing kindergartners, high schoolers, that kind of.
Through the president to member Hildy, yes, actually, the high school was built and the Benson side of it actually used to be the middle school side of it. It was the Benny Benson Junior High that was attached to the East High School. And so this was in review. This was a year ago of where we could place ANCCS if the leaseor didn't come up with a better lease. If you recall, this was one of our contingency plans, and it is separated this fall, or this spring rather. We are not going to make any adjustments other than primary safety adjustments that we need to do for students. The furniture is coming from ANCCS, so the size of furniture matches all those things. But if our solution is to keep ANCCS there for a year more to look for a permanent place, we would then address playground equipment and other facilities for youth, for younger children. But presently, the school is pre-K through 8 and a little over 200 students. And we have a good, safe place for them that is separated from others. I do foresee, though, what generally happens is when we put schools together, they start to cooperate and look for ways to tie their learning together. And Dr. Johnson, if there's anything else that I had missed, you can jump in, or Mr. Hargraves.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop. I was gonna say, Daryl Vincek's on the line, and he has a lot of details. He's been actually on site working with both principals in the school program. So I'd like to turn it over to him to share some more detail.
Thanks, Dr. Johnson, through the chair. I would like to point out to the board that we've done this before. When I was a principal of Russian Jack Elementary, the school was destroyed by a fire in 1997 and that winter break. So in 1998, we moved our preschool through third grade into the Benson wing. We were downstairs, now they're upstairs, but we have done that. So we are taking security very paying close attention to it, making sure that things are done well. But as Dr. Bishop mentioned, what we found when we were there was the high school students just rise to the occasion. It's a great opportunity to give kids meaningful jobs and work, and they love pitching in and they love helping. We had nothing but a great experience there. Dr. Johnson will be providing an extra security person for the first quarter to make extra sure that we're okay. And Principal Spinella and Principal Sweetser are working through things such as mitigation plans, evacuation routes, all the different little safety nuances, where to eat lunch, where the kids are going to pick up lunch. This has been a huge lift for 2 weeks and a great team effort. So Principal Spinella and the East staff are to be commended for their willingness. They left little packages for the ANCCS teachers of welcoming them, little gift packages, which was really sweet to make folks feel welcome and a part of that school. So we were the tiny T-Birds back in '98. So I look forward to East and the ANCCS relationship that will come from this.
Thank you, Mr. Vincek. Really appreciate all the work you've done on that.
All right. Are there any other last questions for the superintendent? Member Donnelly.
If everybody else is gone. Madam Superintendent, is the district planning to offer or participating in any critical race theory training for district employees?
Through the president to Member Donnelly, I am going to ask Sonia Hunt, our Senior Director of Equity and Compliance, to come forward.
To the president, to Member Donnelly, critical race theory is one of the theories that is presented in the book study that we've done, Equity and Anti-Racism in Education. It was discussed in terms of how it evolved from identity theories. So we're talking from Helms all the way through to critical race theory to what we have today, which is anti-racism. So basically, same theoretical framework, different names. That was discussed in the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi. So in terms of its journey, yes. Any other detail other than that, no.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that explanation. My question was, is the district planning to offer or participating in any critical race theory training for district employees? Maybe you could address that.
I can address that. So we have book studies that we provide for teachers at their time. And we have, in the evenings, we have our employees who want to teach them can teach a book study. So for professional development for adults, the book study of How to Be an Anti-Racist was one of the book studies that we did.
And the other half of my question, is there any plans to do anything additionally in the future?
Through the president to Member Donnelly, if there is interest by employees to have another book study, yes, I foresee that that interest would be granted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Member Hilding.
Just to follow up on that for my own clarification. So my understanding, a book study is just, I read a lot of books and I like to learn about a lot of different things. That's not me taking a class in that I'm going to incorporate into my instruction, but understanding the history of how things develop in our country, lots of different things. Is that what I'm understanding?
Through the president, Member Hildy, yes. We have had other book studies in the past that weren't about anti-racism. So it's generally comes from a group of staff. They could be teachers or other educators or support staff that have an idea to move forward. And we have an application process through our professional development to be able to assist with registration, things like that. They occur outside of an employee's day. And the credit, if they are credit, that would have to be approved by university. So it goes through their processes.
Next up, Board Member Bellamy.
I just wanted to add as well to Member Hildy's comments. I think one of the things we do really well in this district is to provide opportunities for people to engage, to have conversations. And I will state again that I really don't think the board need to dictate to employees what they can and cannot read. I think it's optional, and I think whatever the book title is, people get to decide for themselves whether they want to participate. And I like that about this district. I like that people are excited about some things, and I like that we give them opportunities to engage and to have those deeper conversations. That's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody that's helped. At this time, I don't see any other questions. And so unless you had any final thoughts, Dr. Bishop, we can keep going on the agenda.
No, Madam President, thank you. That concludes my report.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, next up is our consent agenda. And Madam Vice President, if you would please get us started.
Sure. Okay, I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of ASD memorandum number 087, which is a personnel report, the regular session minutes from January 19th, 2021, and ASD memorandum number 076, acceptance of grant award, the Carl D. Perkins Grant Award for Professional Development Funds, and memorandum number 078, acceptance of continuation grant award, Alternative Schools Coalition Grant. Need a second?
I think that was Andy, but it was a quiet Andy. Yep. All right. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Katie, if you could please do a roll call vote.
Emily, are you still on?
There we go. Emily, are you on? I'm not sure if she's still there.
Yes. Yes, she's there.
And thank you. Is that your yes vote for the?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Member Mitchell?
Yes.
Member Marset?
Yes.
Member Holloman?
Yes.
Member Hildy?
Yes.
Member Donnelly?
Yes.
Vice President Bellamy?
Yes.
President Michaelis?
Yes.
And the consent agenda passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. We have no public action items, therefore no public testimony on action items tonight. We do have a host of things on the non-action items. I know that Member Marset had wished to pull item number 2, ASD Memorandum 079. Were there any other items that board members wish to pull to discuss from the non-action item list? Member Hildy?
I just have a question on why the operating budget transfers aren't just like grouped as one memo for multiple months, just going forward for voting next agenda, if that's possible. I think as non-action, they could just be lumped together.
Well, they're information only, so we don't even vote on them.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
All right, seeing no other questions on the non-action items, Member Marcette, you had asked for item number 2 to be pulled. Turn the floor over to you.
Yes, the reason I pulled this because there's several instances where there were donations made, and I wasn't sure exactly on those donations because one of the questions I've asked is on our School Board Connect or that newsletter that we put out. It has that button up top that says if you'd like to donate to the school district, and then it takes you to a site where you can do a monetary contribution or donation. And so I was just curious if this would reflect that in this report, or is that something totally different?
Madam President, I would request our Chief Financial Officer, Jim Anderson, respond, please.
Sure. To the President, or through the President, to Member Marcette, it does in fact include that. We have a variety of different ways where people can donate. Some of them are, sometimes they'll call the district or they'll email the district, but putting it on the webpage, we've had a lot of people start using that as a mechanism. And when we do get phone calls, we refer them to that as a mechanism so we can carefully keep track. It's not just the dollar amount that we want to track, it's the donor intent to make sure that once we get the money, that we meet the intent of the donor. And then of course, we follow up with the donors for future potential opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't sure. I'd asked that question before because I never noticed that donate button. And so I just wanted to know where we're reporting that. And so it's reflected in that report then. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the second opportunity for public testimony, which I don't see anybody or have anybody signed up. So now it is 7:35 and we're at school board and administration comments. Is there anybody that would like to share some final thoughts? Member Marcette.
It's not necessarily final thoughts, but I haven't been able to bring this up at the work session or anything else. In the governance committee, and I bring this up, but I thought I would do it here since the proposed discipline policy, we were waiting on feedback from the administration, and I just didn't know if we had received anything or if they've had a chance to even look at that.
Through the President, to Member Marcette, this is Dr. Stock. I have a draft that's been typed up. Katie Grant has put the touches on it. It's in draft form. I was going to share it with the governance committee. It hasn't been widely shared among all the administration yet to see if there's any more that we want to do to it, but I have made some suggested changes to it and given a copy to Katie.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Stock.
You're welcome.
Next up in the queue, Board Member Bellamy.
Yes, I just have a couple of, first of all, a huge thank you to Dr. Bishop and a thank you to the board. I am a member of the Council of Grady City Schools cohort group, and my first assignment was done tonight. Thank you. And that was the outcome planning, having an outcome, making an outcome calendar, outcome monitoring calendar. So I really appreciate that selfishly. The other thing is tomorrow is testimony for the SB 8. So that starts at 9 o'clock. And if I'd like to invite people to join me in providing testimony in support of that. And then the other, just an announcement, the anti-racism and instructional equity policies have moved out of governance. They were posted today, and they are available for review. And more information will be on the website soon regarding when we will, how we are going to engage with the public around those policies. And my final suggestion is to ask for a format for our reports. So we don't have a format. I like a Member Hildy's format. And if that works for everybody, then that works for me. So if we can do that in maybe communication. Okay, great. That's it. Thank you.
And Dr. Bishop?
Thank you. I want to thank you and thank my member Bellamy too. And if I think I know your teacher, you're going to need a lot more detail on that. And just tell them that in another month we'll have more detail on that. That is the general overview of the monitoring calendar. You have a pretty stiff expectations by teachers there. But I wanted to just share with the board, thank you for your support in getting us back to school, and certainly thank you for our elementary who've been in school and our secondary who are honing their practices with their small groups. And I especially want to just thank the administrative team that work with me to assist in getting that done. It has been an effort from school-based people to district-based people to parents at home. And I look forward, and I'm happy that we're having a week off for, just the anxiety and everything to just, to get back, and we will finish strong. This is going to be an excellent last quarter. I'm confident in the people of ASD and so far as our employees, as well as our parents and students. We've had success thus far. And while this is ending a week and ending the third quarter, I just can't wait to get back. So thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of quick announcements for those that are listening in. Next Monday, March 8th, first day of spring break, is our joint meeting between the school board and the assembly. It's in the evening time from 5 to 7. The next day on the 9th, between 3:30 and 5:30, we've got 2 committee meetings, governance and communications, also in the middle of spring break. And then our next regular board meeting altogether is going to be March 16th, and it'll be after our kids are all back in school. So looking forward to some fun updates from there. But again, just want to say thank you to everybody for attending the meeting, from the board to the administration, and have a very happy, safe spring break. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
President Vacalis? President Vacalis?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you that we have a finance committee meeting on the 10th. You didn't mention that, so I thought I'd throw it in there from noon to 1.
Oh, is it tomorrow? It says the 3rd.
Oh, it's tomorrow. The 3rd.
Is it tomorrow?
Thank you. I missed that.
All right. It is tomorrow. You're right. It is tomorrow.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic